I'm Danny. I'm 24 years old and I'm a journalist based in Manchester. One of the reasons I wanted to become a journalist was to learn how to tell my own story. I was born in Cambodia and I was adopted in 1997 by a British couple. My mum died when I was born and I've never met my birth family. For many adoptees, growing up can be a traumatic experience. Feelings of guilt and shame are not uncommon, and for some international adoptees like me, facing racism, abuse and neglect are sad parts of their story. Even though my parents divorced when I was 3 years old, I've always been surrounded by love, but I would like to find out more about where I came from. I wanted to know what it was like for adoptees who had found their birth families. I spoke to one woman, Emmy, who was adopted as a baby in 1999. In June last year, she got a DNA testing kit for her birthday. Because Emily is a different ethnicity to her parents, she says that growing up, sometimes there was confusion about who they were and who she was in relation to them.
Asked and having to explain that these weren't strangers and they just are a different race, and why my parents look different as a child, which was very hard to do, and trying to understand that I am different. And yeah.
Okay, Emily, so just talk me through what made you want to buy a DNA testing kit. Tell me a bit about what the process, about the story behind that.
Okay, so we never knew my background. So I knew I was Eurasian, so I knew my biological mother's background, or kind of got a sense of that, but we never knew. On my birth certificate, my biological father was never named. We never knew not where in Asia my origins come from. So it was kind of a guessing game since I was little. We in recent years, we were told that I was half Indian, but never knew the percentage. But it was kind of a guessing game in the sense that my family would say, oh, you might be Malaysian. I looked very Chinese as a child. We never knew. So a DNA test was always on our mind as a joke. And then for my 21st birthday back in June, I kind of said to my father, look, now is the time, let's just do a DNA test. So I searched into Ancestry, 23andMe, and thought, you know what, might as well just choose one of these companies. And we just decided to get one for my 21st birthday.
Walk me through what it was like. So you've done your DNA test, you've sent the results off. What was it like to find out that you had living relatives? So just tell me a bit about what happened when someone got in touch with you on Facebook.
Okay, so like I said, I did this DNA test back in June because it was my 21st birthday. I came back, I was in Ireland at the time. I came back and did the DNA test. I got the package through in the post, did the DNA test. It was just in a wee tube. I sent it off, didn't think much about it. Got the updates on my phone, and it came back through. Didn't realize at the time that actually, whilst I took the DNA test, Ancestry matches any DNA that matches with you at the same time. So you could be matched with anybody. So it comes up with third and fourth cousins. It can come up with anything really. At the time, it didn't come up with anything. So I just logged off. I got the information I needed. I got all my DNA results back. I just logged off and didn't really think about it for months and months and months. And then, so this was June 2020. And then in January 2021, one night I was just in bed, overthinking. It was just a Friday night. It was about 1 a.m. It was late at night. So I thought, you know what, might as well just check my DNA. I just wanted to see it again. There wasn't any reason for me to go on it, which was the strangest thing, thinking back at it. But then I saw this message that popped up on Ancestry, and it was from this woman. She messaged me back in October at this point, so this was January, so there was at least like 3-4 months in between our messages. But she didn't have a surname, but she sent me a message saying, oh, it's matched as being first or second cousins. And she gave so much information that I just knew that it couldn't have been any fraud happening. I couldn't, like, this person had to know this information, like, or like she couldn't have made it up, basically. So I got really excited. I didn't sleep that night. I messaged her back about maybe, oh my goodness, like 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, because I just didn't sleep. And I was very nervous. I had to go for a COVID test because I was quarantining from flying back from Ireland at that point in time. And I went for a COVID test, and the woman messaged me back that morning. We spoke via Facebook, and she told me all about this family history, and then all about my family history. She was from the French side of the family, and there was a bit of a breakage in information because the family weren't communicating with the family back in Singapore. They lost all contact with each other. So she turned out to be my biological mother's first cousin, and she told me about my biological mother, and that I have an uncle who sadly passed away about 20 years ago in a car crash. And then she told me about my grandfather, and my grandfather was a very influential man in Singapore at the time, and that's why my adoption was very, like, kept very quiet and very quick. Like, you would never hear of a child being adopted, especially in the UK, but in general, like, that quickly. It was only a week old since I was adopted at a week old and was home with my adopted parents after 7 days. So it was very, very quick and done very privately and very quietly. So I Googled his name, and what came up was a load of articles and a blog. And this blog was very interesting because I clicked on it, and it had the person who wrote it had the same name as the uncle that passed away. And so I kind of sort of took a step back and thought, and it was all about his past, and I took a step back and thought, oh my goodness, I think he must have not died. Like, it must have been just a rumor. So I messaged the woman who messaged me, messaged me on Ancestry, and she lives very close to me in England. And so I messaged her that night and said, look, I don't think he's dead. I looked into him. I did a wee bit of stalking, which is awful, but it was fun. So I messaged him on Facebook. I found him on Facebook, found his contact details, but I did the whole cliche, I think you might be my uncle. And this was on the Saturday night at like about 2 a.m. because I was overthinking, and I never sleep when I overthink. So this was about 2 a.m. So I did the whole, I think you might be my uncle. I wrote a message, like, and I had like a few spelling mistakes in it because I was so excited. Like, I thought he was dead, and that, like, this is the closest extended family that I had or had even known about. And so I just didn't want that to be my first impression of that he would get of me, because it was all very cliche and it was very rushed, and I didn't really think about it. So I left it for that Sunday, and Sunday evening I thought, oh, you know what, I'm just going to call this guy. So I looked into him, and I looked into his business, and like found his contact details on Company House, and it turns out he lives near London. He's got a wife, 3 children. Like, it's crazy. And so I called him, and I called him twice. I got his voicemail. So at that point in time, it's 5 o'clock on a Sunday evening. So I was like, you know what? I've had a very, like, this weekend has been very weird and very quick. And I never really thought I'd ever have the opportunity to get in contact with my biological parents or anybody from my biological side. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do anything else. I've tried. I'm not going to do anything. And then about 10 minutes later, after I made that decision, the phone rang, and I saved his contact details into my phone. I saw his name pop on my phone, and I was shocked and I was shaking. I sat on my bed, and I answered, and I was shaking. I said, I can't really, it was all a bit of a blur, but I said, you don't have to contact, I won't contact you ever find information about my biological mother, and I think she is your sister. And we spoke on the phone for about 2 hours that night, and like I gave so much, like the information that I got from the cousin gave me the information to persuade him that I was who I was saying I was. So I was saying, I can give you my birth certificate, I can give you this, but this is my name, like I'm Lucy Victoria, like this is my name, like I can give you my birth certificate. And he said to me, look, you've given me so much information that it couldn't possibly be anybody else, like who would know that. So we spoke on the phone for 2 hours that night. We called again the next day, on the Monday, and ever since, like, we've been in contact on and off on a regular basis. I've met his family, I've met my cousins. He's told me so much about my family history, it's unbelievable. And yeah, so we're still in contact to this day, but yeah, that's where I've got to.
How were your adoptive family during this time? Were they supportive, surprised? Just tell us a bit about that.
So my adoptive family, they have always been so supportive, like unbelievably. Like I would never ask for anything different. I mean, my father did this whole Ancestry thing anyway with me. We have a family group chat that, like, I kept them all updated during this weekend. They were so happy for me. Like, so they were more interested than I was. Like my mother, she researches everybody, like even like I just said their name, like I was on the Saturday, I was leaving for this COVID test, like it was half an hour before. I sent all the information on the family group chat. She already had like their Facebook pages up, like Googling, looking at articles, like looking at everything. So my mother was very excited. Everybody was very excited, like my sister, my father, like everybody. They were just so intrigued. And I, like, when I was, so with these conversations I had with my biological uncle, I had to write notes about all this family history that I was discovering, just to tell them, like just to say, like, because it was very long conversations and I was just writing notes and just to read out to them after. So I spent 2 hours on the phone to my biological uncle, and then about an hour trying to recreate that conversation with my family at the kitchen table. So, and like putting it on in group chat. So yeah, they've been so supportive, and they've always been so supportive and open, and it's whatever I want to do, it's my choice, and they will support me throughout whatever I want to do. And I remember it was the Sunday morning, it was after I messaged my uncle, and I remember going into the bathroom, and at that point in time I was quarantining, so my mother couldn't see me, she couldn't hug me, but she was standing outside the bathroom toilet and saying, "Are you okay?" Like, and because at that point in time, it was a very private moment, but like I hadn't taken it in emotionally, like I was being very steady, and it was being very, like I wasn't acting naturally, like to the heaviness of this situation, like that's not the right word, but like I wasn't acting naturally, like if you like you'd be breaking down, like, and I just hadn't done that yet. And it was a Sunday morning, I had 2 days of this already, and I just remember breaking down on the other side of the bathroom toilet, and I was just there like, I don't know how I'm dealing with this. And she was just like, you know what, I'm there for you. If you want to slow things down, I'm there for you. You don't have to take this Zoom call, or you don't have to message them. You can just take some time to yourself on that Sunday. And I just had an overflow of emotions that I just broke down in the bathroom toilet. And my mother, like, bless her, she couldn't touch me, she couldn't hug me. And like, in this point in time, like, it's just so emotional for my family that at that point you would want to hug your daughter, you would hug your mother, like, see comfort in people, but she couldn't do it. And it was just so, this is why COVID is destroying. Like, I couldn't help, like, luckily I didn't have COVID, but it was just so hard on everybody in the family at that point in time, because this came up in such a weird time that it, like, if this was normal, I would be meeting them for coffee, I would be meeting them in person. And yeah.
Sometimes when people use DNA testing kits, the answers are more difficult than the questions. It was very emotional listening to Emmy's story, but it gave me inspiration and hope for the future. Maybe one day I too would be able to find my birth family. But